So guys, welcome to another video from Chess DNA, and in today's video, I'm going to show you a deadly trap in the Petrov Defense that I've used with tremendous amount of success and have gotten a ton of opponents falling right into it. So without wasting any more time, let's dive right into it. So the game starts off with 1e4, the most played move in the history of chess with white pieces, and you just reply with 1e5, just a solid way of responding to 1e4, knight f3, attacking the pawn on e5. And there's three main ways to deal with this situation. You can defend the pawn on e5 with knight c6, which is considered to be the best move. The slightly inferior Philidor's defense with d6, because you're defending the pawn, but you are basically not developing any piece, so it's not considered to be a great opening for black. But the recommendation that I have for you in this video is the Petrov Defense, knight to f6, and you say that, okay, white is attacking my pawn on e5, I will counterattack white's pawn on e4. So this is a kind of a copycat system, but also some kind of counter-attacking chess. So you're not defending the pawn on e5, you're counter-attacking white's pawn on e4, and in this position, there are so many moves that white can play. So first of all, bishop c4 is a very popular move in this position, which is basically a mistake, and a lot of players just automatically play bishop c4. The reason is that you just eliminate that pawn on e4, and if white captures your pawn on e5, you have this very beautiful d5 move hitting that bishop. Usually white goes queen f3 in this position, threatening a checkmate because the knight and queen are intersecting on f7. So you basically play bishop e6 in this position, defending the pawn on f7 and defending the pawn on d5, and the bishop just is very great on e6 for the time being. And here again the threat is just to capture the bishop. So if now white drops the bishop back to b3, you have this very beautiful queen to g5 attacking the knight on e5, and there's no good way to defend the knight. If you just move the knight back, you're just basically blocking the d pawn, and then the development of the bishop is just where is this bishop ever going to develop if you put the knight on d3? Like, both of these minor pieces are right in front of these b and d pawns, and this bishop is just like completely in jail. So knight d3 is just not the main move, but in fact it is the best move that white has in this position. There is bishop a4 check, but that also just achieves nothing. You just play c6 and then threaten to play b5, and again here the knight is still under attack. You move the knight back and then b5, and again this is such a great position for black. And if your opponent just plays d4 in this position, which my opponents have always been playing against me in this position, they think that, okay, the bishop will attack the queen and the pawn will defend the knight and the problem is solved. Boom, bishop takes on c1 check, winning the rook in the corner as well, and this is just game over, guys. So you can also just maybe take on b2 and grab this rook, and just a winning position. You're up a piece, you can win the rook. The king is just horribly standing there in the center, so it's just game over. So this is the first thing about this line. The other thing, which is that if, for example, they don't play bishop c4, they can also play something such as 3 knights, and then I recommend going into the 4 knights. And if they play bishop c4, which is the 4 knights Italian, knight takes on e4 is the central fork trick, and after knight takes you play d5, and you are guaranteed to get the bishop pair if they take on d5. If bishop d3 is basically the main move, but you win the knight, and after bishop takes you just play bishop d6, and this is just again slightly better for black, and we basically get what we want out of the opening, a slightly better position to play for a win with black pieces. What else do you want? And if for example they just capture on f7, like in this position, after you sack the knight on e4, bishop can first take on f7 with a check, king takes, and then knight takes e4. Is that any good? Not really. Then you just play d5, attack the knight, and a lot of players like to play knight back to g3 in this position. You just play e4 first and send that knight back home, back to the garage, as one of my students Gabriel says it, and then h5, trying to go after this knight. And your opponent might think, whoa, free pawn, couple of pieces attacking it. So knight takes h5, there is queen h4 attacking the knight and putting the queen in a very attacking spot here. So what do you want to do with this knight? Moving it back to g3? Well, that's fair, but then bishop g4 is coming to just almost trap the queen. You might think that f3 solves the problems, but e takes f3, and after, for example, you take with a knight, knight takes f3, but this knight is kind of still pinned. Queen takes g3 is the answer to all this. Rook takes, wins the queen back. And this is just plus, I mean, -7 for black. And what else do you want from this position? So already very, very promising lines for black in this 4 knights as well. And if your opponent actually plays d4, that will be the main move. But a lot of players are really tempted to take this pawn on e5. And they expect you to play the Stafford Gambit with knight c6, knight takes knight, and d takes knight. And they have seen how to refute the Stafford Gambit. So they're okay, letting you to play the Stafford Gambit. But we are not actually going to play some stupid gambit here. We are here to play objectively best chess. If you want to play objectively best move, the move would be d6, sending the knight back to f3, and then grabbing the pawn on e4. But your opponent might be ready for that even. So what should we really do? The system that I recommend against knight takes e5 is knight takes e4, counter-attacking chess. So the point of Petrov defense is to copycat. e4, e5, copycat. Knight f3, knight f6, copycat. Knight takes e5, knight takes e4, copycat. If queen e2 attacking the knight, what should we do? Should we play d5? Well, if we play d5, then there is d3, knight has to move away, and then knight can give a check, and then it'll just collapse. I mean, there's this very evident that this is just lost. What did I say? Copycat. So if queen e2, queen e7, counterattacking white's knight. But you might ask that, okay, queen takes e4, defends the knight, so what are we talking about here? d6, and queen is undefended on e4, and this knight cannot move, so you recover the knight. d4 defends the knight, you take the knight, and let's say if queen takes first, white is like, okay, I'm a pawn up, I just want to go into an endgame and trade down as much material as possible, so queen takes e5. You just simply trade queens and say, okay, I accept that. You put the bishop on f5, immediately try to recover the pawn that you lost, attacking c2. They'll go bishop d3, you just eliminate that bishop, pawn takes, and knight c6 attacks e5. They will play bishop f4 or maybe f4, doesn't matter. Knight b4 threatens to go to the c2 square, threatening a fork, and you're hitting the pawn on d3 as well. So white will play just something that is king d2, right? And then you long castle, and suddenly this pawn has no way to be saved. And in this position, for example, what they really do, knight c3 is played against me in most cases. I just take the pawn with the knight, hit the bishop, so king has to go to maybe e3 to defend the bishop, but then okay, you can take the pawn on b2, but then we are opening a lot of files on the queen side where our king is residing for timing, so we don't want to take on b2. We play bishop c5 check, developing a piece, letting the rook in, and if king, for example, goes to f3, then we take on f2, hit the rook gets back, and then we can just drop the knight back, hit the bishop, and negative 3.3 simply, and the black is just a pawn up, completely winning position. What else do you want with black pieces in a game against with a Petrov? Like, this is a dream scenario. So let's go back a few moves, and you might ask, okay, we agree that this queen takes d5 was an inaccuracy, we should not take with a queen. What if pawn takes, and white is like, okay, I'm up a pawn, what does black have in this position? Here comes the deadly trap that I am talking about, which I have to give a lot of credit to the I am Eric Rosen, who introduced this trap to me in one of his videos. So do check out his channel as well. He's such a great teacher of Petrov defense. So here the recommendation is knight c6, attacking the pawn on e5. And what are the ways that white can use to defend the pawn? For example, there is this way, bishop b5, pinning the knight down. So in this case, you just unpin. And now if they just try to hold on to the pawn, a lot of players do that, which is even the best move in this position. What you basically do in this position is you play g5 and ask that bishop, what is it doing here? Bishop will just drop back to g3, just holding to the pawn. What else can go wrong? It's a big time blunder because you have this f5, and suddenly your opponent is just down a piece. Believe it or not, because queen cannot take the pawn, it's defended by the bishop. You cannot take en passant because then queen takes on e4. And what else to do? You have to move the queen, right? So queen, for example, goes to a4 and f4, traps that poor bishop on g3, and black is just winning a piece in this position. So I have got a lot of opponents falling right into this, and I do trust you guys that you will be able to convert this position into a victory from this being a pawn up. What else do you want? Let's what white can do. For example, castle, queen takes e5, for example, they'll have to play rook knight c3 to play rook e1, and then you just castle long, just a winning position here, being up a piece. What else? I mean, this is just completely winning. We all can agree, right? So I hope you guys enjoyed. This is my recommendation. I will cover all the other lines of the Petrov defense in great detail as well in our future videos, but I hope you enjoyed these tricky systems that you can use to destroy your opponent who plays one e4 and expects to get an attacking game, but you just have your lines prepared. Everything is there in your memory, and you just you've seen my video and you just destroy your opponent, and they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Do like, subscribe, and comment on this video for the algorithm, and I will see you in the next video.